And so I've learned that writing is not typing. I write all the time.
You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Brad Taylor.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Author Stories Podcast. I hope you're enjoying your 2018 so far. I know I am. We have some exceptional author interviews scheduled for you, and as always, we bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. And I'd like to thank a few sponsors before we get into today's show, because it's those sponsors that allow us to keep bringing you shows day after day. The Son of Earp series by Chuck Buda, Shifters, Ghosts, and Demons, all set within the backdrop of the Old West. James Johnson, illegitimate son of the legendary Wyatt Earp, dreams of adventure and following in his daddy's footsteps. His mentally disabled friend Carson stands by his side. Together the friends wage war against evil. The Son of Earp series has it all. Supernatural forces are at work and the body count is rising. Can James and Carson save their cursed friend? Will they defeat the haunted gunslinger before more innocents die? Can James and Carson defeat the possessed before the demon hits the Chisholm Trail? Or will the devil win the West? Curse of the Ancients, Haunted Gunslinger, Summoner of Souls. The Son of Earp series is available in paperback, ebook, and audio formats exclusively from Amazon or free through Amazon Kindle Unlimited. Pick it up from Chuck Buda today. There's a link in the show notes. Mad Jones, Heretic by Quinn Hillier. Mad Jones Heretic delivers sharp satire on modern religion, politics, and media, all at the same time, along with insightful representations of the vagaries of today's celebrity culture and the lunacy of internet comment threads. Controversies surrounding race and sexual morality enter in as well. Additionally, its setting at the end of the 20th century in the midst of the Y2K computer scare provides the perfect vehicle to dissect millennialist themes as well. Mad Jones Heretic by Quinn Hillier. And Craig Martell and Scott Moon's brand new kickoff to their Dark Landing series. The first book is called Assignment Dark Landing, a frontier world, one sheriff, and all the action one spaceport can't handle. Dark Landing is the wild, wild west of known space. Sheriff Thaddeus Fry will never completely leave the battlefields of Centauri Prime. His new assignment, the Sheriff's Office of Dark Landing, could be a do-nothing job, or it could get him killed. The first thing he learns is that his predecessor's headquarters were bombed, creating the vacancy that led to his appointment. The company man is not who he expected, to say the least. His new accommodations are right in the center of Dark Landing's misfits. He finds one native willing to talk to him and tries to make him a deputy. What really matters on Dark Landing are the mines. Faced with a dangerous collapse that could kill hundreds of workers, he leaps into action and gets the story of Dark Landing started. Fans of Firefly, Bonanza, and Tombstone will love the new series. It's going to be releasing every 18 days, so go pick up a copy of Dark Landing as the series kicks off, and watch for it. Scott and Craig were on the show right before Christmas, so go back and listen to that episode and get a full, deep understanding of everything that you're doing. Thank you for listening. As always, stay tuned at the end of the show for an audiobook clip from Richard Gleaves, the Jason Crane series. Now on to our interview. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Brad Taylor on the show with me. Brad has a brand new book out called Operator Down, a Pike Logan Thriller. It's an exceptional book. I hope you all go pick up a copy of it. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, Brad. I begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or a storyteller?
Actually, my first memory of wanting to be a writer was probably reading as a child. I was always a voracious reader, and I was a kid that read with a flashlight underneath the sheets at night. And in the back of my head, it just has always been there that someday I'm going to write a book. I never planned on being a writer per se. I just wanted to write a book. And I finally got some time on my hands. My last assignment in the military was being an instructor, and so it was more of a 9-to-5 job instead of being deployed continuously. And so I set out to write a book. I thought it would sit on the bedside table, and it sold, surprising me more than anybody.
I think that's a pretty common experience that that most writers obviously love books, and one day it just kind of clicks. Well, I think I could do that. What sorts of things did you like reading when you were younger?
Oh, I read everything. I mean, I probably went through all kinds of phases of, Watership Down. I read all the Zant series. I went through a Heinlein science fiction phase, Stephen King phase, you name it. I went through them all.
Yeah. So you said that you didn't really think that you could be a writer per se, or maybe a professional author, but you wanted to write a book. What was your first inclination of a story that you thought about writing?
I wanted to write a story of redemption. I kind of liked the whole Rocky theme type thing. And so that's the story. That was the heart of what I wanted to write about. That's the heart of my first book, One Rough Man. I mean, it's obviously a counterterrorism thriller, but that's only because I used to be in Special Forces. If I'd have been a policeman, he'd have been a cop. Pike Logan would have been a cop. If I'd have been a priest, Pike Logan would have been taking confession. It still would have been a story of redemption.
Yeah, and that's a common theme that I think resonates with all of us on some level, is that a story of redemption can come in all shapes and sizes, but that's a very human story to tell. Yeah,
definitely, and that's what I'd set out to create. That when I created the plot line right off the bat, I already had in my head. I mean, it's been brewing in the back of my head for years and years and years. So all I had to do was kind of connect the dots on the page.
So what did you do professionally? You said that you were in the military. What service and where did you serve?
Yeah, I was actually I started out. I was in the Army. I started out as infantry lieutenant. I went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and then I spent the rest of my time. I served close to 22 years, and majority of that time in special operations.
Wow. So because you were military, you said that's kind of the shape that the first book took, a story of redemption, but is Special Forces. What was the genesis for that story?
The genesis for One Rough Man?
Yeah, that first book that you wrote.
It was just like I said, it had been brewing in my head for years. The genesis was I wanted to write a book, and I had this story in my head. I just had to create it around. I had to develop characters and things like that. The story that was in my head was kind of an amorphous thing. I had this that wanted to get out, and so then I created Pike Logan, who's a Special Forces operator. Jennifer Cahill, his partner, who's a civilian, and the yin and the yang kind of thing of the redemption story went from there.
Yeah. You said that you didn't expect for it to sell. That this just wanted to be a project that you did to say that you did it. What did you do with the book when you finished it? How did it get out to the world?
Well, I did what everybody else does. The first thing I did, which was a mistake, is does anybody in my family know an agent? Because this has got to be easy. And so we went through, a whole Rolodex of people who knew this, and it turned out my wife's boss knew. I'm going to get this story wrong, but something along these lines. My wife's boss knew the producer of the Showtime series Dexter, who had a literary agent down the hall. And so I sent the book to her, and it was just a horrifically bad book. I didn't have any idea what I was doing, and there was no query letter or anything. And she said, yeah, no, this is pathetic, and sent it back to me politely. She gave me some hints of maybe she should do this, maybe she should do that. I know she was just being nice to me. Looking back on it, I know she's being nice to me. But I thought, okay, I'm on to something. So I did everything she said and sent it back. And she was like, yeah, no, not again. And so she introduced me to a freelance editor and said, would you consider working with an editor? And I said, well, by all means, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I had no idea. I had no instruction on writing. My writing is not my major in college. I've written theses and things like that, nonfiction. But for fiction, I didn't even know how to do chapters. I mean, the book I sent her didn't have a chapter in it. It was just one giant thing, chapter 1, and then the end.
So you had obviously read all of your life, and you understood in some kind of ethereal way story structure, but the mechanics of actually breaking it up and making it presentable, you just had no clue about.
Right, and I understood intuitively. I understand pacing and I understand, the climax and how to keep that going and that kind of thing. Obviously, it worked out. I just didn't know. Basically, I learned how to write by reading. And luckily, there's certain things that I'm glad that I didn't take any professional writing classes, because I did things which, people say, how'd you know to break the rule? Like Pike Logan's in first person, the main character. Everybody else is in third person. So when I'm talking about when the villains are in there, it's a third person book. So it goes between first and third person, which apparently is a huge no-no. And people say, how'd you know to break that rule about doing first and third? And I say, I didn't know it was a rule. I know that Nelson DeMille did it with his John Corey series. I know Joseph Fender did it with his series, so I liked how they did it, so I did it. They taught me.
That's amazing. So you work with the editor and obviously you get the book kind of into shape. Did you resubmit it to the agent and go from there?
No, by this time I'd actually done some research on what it takes to be a writer, and she didn't do military thrillers. I learned, you find an agent who does your genre, number one, which I had completely ignored. And so she was never going to take it. She did like romance novels and things like that. And so from there, I did the what everybody else does. I started researching who are agents in my genre, and then I just started submitting one after the other.
What year was that the book finally got bought and published?
2011.
2011. So, there's a big surge in military thrillers, and it was obviously the right time. The market really was hungry for this type of book. Did you get a lot of feedback on Pike Logan from readers? Did they connect with him?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. Most of the rejections I got from agents were, this stuff doesn't sell. I mean, I was a little bit ahead of the bow wave because now everybody's doing it. But back then it was like, no, if you don't make it a counterterrorism book, we're sick of those. Those don't sell. And so what I needed to find, which I eventually found, was somebody who wasn't going to say that, and a publisher who wasn't going to tell me no. And I found Dutton. They said, yeah, we'll jump on this. And there is a huge glut now, but back when I was doing it, I was like, we don't want to see this book.
Well, you could say huge glut, or you could say people are really hungry for them. There's lots of them doing really well right now. The new book, Operator Down. How many is this in the Pike Logan series?
This is number 12.
Number 12. Wow. So, and you keep finding new things to put Pike into. One thing about your books is you're always really kind of on the cutting edge of technology and kind of prognosticating about things that could happen in the world. How do you go about picking kind of the scenarios and the thing that you think is going to work in a particular book?
Well, I still do a lot of security consulting, so I think on the pulse of what's going on in the world. And I just generally voraciously read the news every morning about everything all over the world. I get news feeds from the Middle East and something will spark my interest. And I'll start developing a plot line on that. And there's the heart of the book are the characters. You have to care about the characters. I mean, if a bomb goes off in an empty parking lot, who cares? The reason you care is because that bomb's going to hurt somebody. And the reason it's going to hurt is because it's a character. You have to care about the characters. And so I try to develop a scenario that, is interesting, cutting edge as far as being current events. It's realistic. It's something that could actually happen. But it's also something that has some kind of effect on Pike and the task force.
Right. And in the times we live in, there's no shortage of story ideas if you just read the newspaper every day, is there?
Yeah, the problem with writing current events is precisely that they're current. And the reason I have so many books out is I ended up going to 2 books a year, because if you write about current events, something could happen that completely destroys your book. One Rough Man, for instance, dealt with Iran, and at that time we were rattling sabers pretty hard against Iran for their nuclear program and things like that. And I kept telling my publisher, we got to get my book out. If we go to war with Iran, the whole book's worthless. And I did that for All Necessary Force Book 2. I did it for Book 3, and my publisher said, okay, smarty pants, because I was writing them. I was still doing security work, was paying the bills for the most part. So I turned my books in 6 months early, because I had 6 months I'd be gone somewhere doing security work. Of course, the publisher does cheat us over that, but then I spend 6 months saying, why are you waiting? Why are you waiting? If you don't get the book out, something can go wrong. And so my publisher said, okay, smarty pants, we'll do 2 a year. And I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. And so I did. For a number of years, I did 2 a year. And this is the first book, Operator Down, where I've gone back to one a year.
So you start thinking about not only what's happening now, but what could happen. Does it ever scare you when you dream up a scenario and then you see the pieces on the international stage start moving and you're like, whoa, it was just a story. I didn't mean for people to use this as a rule book.
Well, it doesn't scare me per se, but it sometimes it surprises me. But a lot of the times it's because it just doesn't make the American news cycle, but I've been looking at it for a long time. For instance, in Days of Rage, the first book with Aaron and Shoshana, which actually come back and operate her down, this book, I used Boko Haram, which is a terrorist organization in Nigeria. Nobody had ever heard of Boko Haram, but as soon as my book came out, they kidnapped all the girls, and the next thing you know, it's like, Brad knew all about this. Well, not really. They've been lopping heads off in Nigeria since 2009. It's just nobody in America had heard of them. I had heard of them. So it's not so, people say, oh, he's prescient. Well, it's just because I actually have my feeds in different areas than the average American does.
Right. So what is the story idea in Operator Down? What is the scenario that Pike and crew find themselves in?
Well, like I said, I wanted to bring back Aaron and Shoshana in this book. It's the first time I've consciously set out to bring back a character from the Pike Logan universe, so to speak, that's not a Taskforce member. And they're Israeli operatives, and so that was ground zero. I wanted to make it personal and vice a world-ending terrorist attack, and I wanted to bring them back. So I naturally focused on Israel. What can I do? Once I started reading all about Israel, what's going on in Israel? How can I bring these guys in? And I found the diamond trade in Israel, which Israel has the largest diamond exchange in the world, and it's a big part of their existence, their economy. And so from there, I looked at, follow upstream, and the diamond mines in Africa. I had not been to Africa. I wanted to set it somewhere new. And so I started studying the diamond industry in Africa. And I always do on-the-ground research. And I was looking, and an idea about a coup started to form in my head. Maybe I'll do a coup in Africa, and Aaron and Shoshana are tied into it somehow or another. But I didn't want to go to Sierra Leone or all these other countries that are all falling apart that have all these blood diamonds. And so I found the country of Lesotho, which is a microstate like the Vatican City. It's completely surrounded by South Africa. I didn't even know it existed until I started doing the research, but it's a country within a country. And they have some of the largest gem quality diamonds on Earth. And so that was the connection. So I could bring Aaron and Shoshana back. There's going to be a coup in Lesotho, and Pike and the Taskforce are tracing an arms dealer who's trying to get some Crichton triggers, which are nuclear triggers, from the South African nuclear program. The nuclear triggers are very precise. Only states can make them. They have to fire absolutely critically super precise, so they're hard to manufacture, and it's going to sell them. And then in the process, those two, Pike and the Taskforce and Aaron and Shoshana kind of collide as the plot comes on.
Wow. You said the Operator Down. This was the first book that you had gone back to one a year. You were putting out two a year before that. Your books are intricately plotted, and there's all these details that you just enumerated to us that take, I would imagine, a good bit of research to make sure that you get the facts just right, so that it's plausible enough that the reader doesn't break out of the story. What kind of research goes into the books before you start writing the story?
It's kind of an ongoing process, to be honest with you. The first bit of research is just absolute deep dive into, for instance, a country Lesotho, coups, the diamond industry, Israel, that kind of thing. And then once I have it formed up of a framework, I'll call it, where I know the story arc, but I don't know the particulars of it, I'll then do on-the-ground research. In this case, I went to Tel Aviv. I got inside the diamond exchange. I went to Jerusalem. I went to Jaffa, Haifa, everywhere in Israel that I was going to use. Then I went to Cape Town, ran around there, South Africa, then went to Johannesburg, South Africa, and then went to the country Lesotho, South Africa, and went and run around there. And when I'm doing that is 50% I'm looking for. I'm trying to find something on the ground that I know I need. But there's 50% that I have no idea about, and I get on the ground and see it and think, ooh, that's perfect. I'm going to do this. And the story starts to form itself from there. In this case, actually, I got more than I bargained for. I was in Lesotho. I'm planning a coup. I'm a Special Forces guy, so I kind of know how to do that. And I came in as a tourist, and I'm running all over the place, taking pictures of the TV stations, the police headquarters, and this kind of stuff. And I went to the Special Forces military base. It took me forever to find that place. and I'm talking to the guy at the front gate, just trying to elicit some information, and I got rolled up by two counterintelligence guys, and was interrogated for about 6.5 hours as a United States spy. And I learned quite a bit about the politics of Lesotho while I was in that interrogation, and that plays out in the book.
Yeah, not to mention the what it's like, on the inside and being interrogated. Those are things you can't get from just interviewing someone, can you?
No. I mean, I certainly looked like a spy. I had a picture of the Prime Minister's residence where in the photo it had a picture that said, "No photos."
Oh, my gosh.
Everything I had on my camera and everything I had on me was, I just said, I'm a tourist. I'm just looking at Lesotho. It was like, why do you have all these pictures? That was incriminating.
Yeah. He was like, no, really, I write books, I promise. And they're like, right.
No, I didn't want to tell them that because they Googled my bio. They were paranoid. If they'd have Googled my bio and seen what I'd done in my previous life, they would have been guaranteed, they would have been convinced I was a spy.
Well, that brings up a great question. When you're doing on-the-ground research, especially in different countries, I've talked to a lot of thriller writers who write and do research in the States and with some of our government organizations and spy organizations and things like that. And there's a certain amount of openness that they allow to authors to ask questions and to get procedures right and things like that. What kind of cooperation do you get from foreign countries? If you say I'm a writer and I'm doing research about this, I'd like to get these facts right. Are people open to that, or is this? Do you mostly have to do kind of covert research like you're doing in Lesotho?
It depends on the country, and this is actually Operator Down's a good example of that. I hit Israel. I went to Tel Aviv, and I immediately got a tour guide. I wanted a day-long tour of Tel Aviv, which is expensive on one thing, but there's no better way to get the history of the city. You can do it in a day. You aren't wasting time Googling things online, top 10 things at TripAdvisor, things like that. This guy's going to do it in a day and give you all the information you need, and I can pick his brain. So I did that, and then as soon as we started out, I felt him out to make sure he wasn't getting mad at me for saying I'm an author. Well, here's my ulterior motive of hiring you. And I eventually told him that here's what the book's about. It's got two Israeli Mossad guys. I tell him, I promise you they're good guys. I'm not going to make Israel look bad. But it involves the diamond exchange, the diamond trade, and I'd really like to get inside the diamond exchange if there's any way to do that. And he said there's no way they can't do it. And we spent the rest of the day together. And by the end of the day, he kind of taken to me because he said, I have a cousin that works in a diamond exchange. You want me to see if she can get you in? And sure enough, he called her, she called me, and I got inside the diamond exchange.
Wow, that's incredible. Because your books are so intricately plotted, or at least they read that way, can I assume that you're a pretty detailed plotter before you start writing? Or kind of what do you do to lay out the book before the actual writing begins?
Actually, I'm not a detailed plotter. I build, like I said before, what I call a framework where I'll know the stakes, I'll know the settings, I'll know the characters, and I'll know the arc of the story, but I don't really have any granular detail. I don't outline chapter by chapter by chapter. I have a set where it's kind of like, okay, you're going to open the book here. For instance, in Operator Down, I wanted to set the tone right off the bat that it's Aaron and Shoshana are going to be in this book. So it starts right off with Aaron doing a surveillance mission in Johannesburg. So now you've got an Israeli in Johannesburg. But I didn't plot out exactly what that was until I got to Johannesburg, went running around. I said, Aaron can do this, he can do that, Aaron can go here. And then I craft it together. So in my mind, I know what the overarching end state of the chapter is, but as far as the granular detail, I don't outline that.
Gotcha. You just kind of see what the characters are going to do on the page and run with it.
I mean, I know what he's got to do.
Right.
I just got to figure out how's he going to do it. And 9 times out of 10, I'll get halfway through a chapter and think, that's not working, and I'll go back to my research, all the photos and things like that, and find something else. In this case, what I found is usually when you're doing in the real world, like as your Special Forces guy, most of the stuff you would do that I'm doing in these books, you would do it in areas that are completely bland and not sexy at all, because you want to be the gray man. You don't want anybody to see you. But I found that, who wants to read about that? I found the readers actually like reading about stuff that they've seen before. The few people who've been to Cape Town or been to Johannesburg or been to Tel Aviv, they want to read something and go, oh, I know exactly what he's talking about. I've been there. So I incorporate all that kind of stuff in there, even though it kind of breaks the cardinal rule of what we would really do. Would we really do a meeting at this location that's known by everybody? No, we do it somewhere else in the back of an alley. But who wants to read about the back of an alley? So,
right.
I now incorporate a lot of known landmarks in the books.
Because you do write a lot about places that we might know, and about circumstances that we may or may not have read about in the headlines, and things that sound familiar. Do you get a lot of feedback from readers asking you hey, is this what really happens behind the scenes? Do people try to pick your brain to find out what you really know?
Yeah, sometimes they do. Sometimes, especially on interviews, for instance, if someone will ask me questions, but I don't ever talk about that. That's completely fenced off and separate from my fiction writing. Nothing in my books I write fiction. It's called fiction for a reason. So I don't ever cloak anything, change the names to protect the innocent type stuff. It's not something I do. There is no such thing as a task force. I created a completely implausible force precisely so nobody would accuse me of writing about a real unit and just changing the name. We don't have anything like the task force.
Right. As an author, I know that you blog on your website, bradtaylorbooks.com, and you'll tackle some kind of prickly subjects sometimes. Do you feel like, as an author, people expect you to weigh in on current events, or maybe things going on with the military and things like that? And do you feel like that an author has a duty to speak about things, or is it just, I write fiction, read my books, and, I don't really, I'm not a person to ask an opinion about?
I guess that's up to the individual author. I do blog about all kinds of national security issues on my blog, but the only reason I do that is because I'll get aggravated when I watch TV and see something happen over and over again. I'm like, that is not correct. That's not true. And so I will then write a blog about it. That's generally what I do. I don't do it to sell books. I certainly wouldn't profess to be able to say what an author should or shouldn't do. I just like blogging about national security because I'm still tapped into it.
Right. Do you have a daily writing habit? With 12 books out now, I would assume that you're on a pretty tight schedule. Like, how do you approach your writing day?
Pretty much full-blown panic. When I was doing 2 books a year, it was
so just like everybody
really
else.
Grueling. It was everyone's been different. I still do security consulting. I have security contracts I do, so that'll cause disruptions. I have to do the research trips. For instance, for Operator Down, I didn't even conduct the research in Operator Down until February of last year, so we were not even there yet. I didn't get to Lesotho until February. I spent New Year's Eve in Tel Aviv. So I was behind the power curve on Operator Down. I've already finished the research trip for the next book in Switzerland, Monaco, and France. So I'm ahead of the power curve there. But I've had a lot of things in between that have happened. I've had knee surgery and things like that have knocked me off my pace. So every book's been a little bit different in how I tackle it. I wish I could say I had some kind of system in place, but I don't.
Do you have a daily word count that you try to hit when you're in writing mode?
No, I don't. I absolutely don't. I tried to, because like I said, I've never had any instruction in writing. And so I've read a lot, here's how you're supposed to be. If you're a writer, you need to do this. And one of the things people say is, be disciplined, get X number of words. Usually it's 1,000 words a day. Get your 1,000 words a day out. And I found that if I forced myself to write 1,000 words a day, I ended up hating what I wrote, and I'd end up deleting it. And so I've learned that writing is not typing. I write all the time. I'm writing in my head continually, and when it's ready to get on the page, I'll put it on the page. For instance, Operator Down, I set a new world record for Brad Taylor. I typed 5,000 words a day for a week and finished off with 8,000 words a day for the last 3 days, which is a personal best for me. I don't recommend it because you don't get any sleep. But I wasn't ready to put something on the page. And so I can go a week without not typing anything, and then in a burst of frenetic activity, whack out 20,000 words. And that works for me. It may not work for anybody else, but I find that I'm writing all the time. The typing is just the end state to get somebody else to see what you've written. But I'm writing when I'm in the shower. I'm writing when I'm driving.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect analogy, is that you're always writing in your head. It's just the transcribing down on the paper and and who wants to track that? That's just getting what you've already dreamed up out on the page. That's fantastic. The new book, Operator Down, a Pike Logan Thriller, is out soon. Where can people find you, Brad, if they want to get in touch with you, or to go back through your back catalog and find out all about you and Pike Logan?
They can go to bradtaylorbooks.com, and it's all the books are there. They can read excerpts there. My tour schedule's actually on there. If they happen to be coming to a city near them, they can certainly come out and get a book and get it signed.
Excellent. We're going to send everybody to pick up a copy of Operator Down. Thank you so much for your time and for coming on the show today, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Mather steepled his hands. "You asked to join us once?" Hedwig leaned forward, eagerly. "The Appointed. Does that appeal?" "Yes." "Do you even know what we do?" "My grandmother used to say that you control the world. That's not far off. But why? To what end?" "I don't know. Power?" "Pour me a bourbon." Mather reached into his briefcase and produced a file folder. "I want to tell you one story. Have you ever heard of Centralia, Pennsylvania?" "No." He produced a photo for Hedwig's inspection. Spring of 1962. A pretty little town, wasn't it? Whitewash and ticky-tacky, pastel housewives and perfect lawns. A mining community, mostly. Coal. He turned over a second photo. A lovely young woman. There was a single witch in Centralia named Anna Lively. Anna had a green thumb. She could make her garden grow, whisper to a flower, and send it shooting from the ground like that. Just lovely. But she was discovered. That spring, a boy named Bobby Avery received a Bell & Howell Zoomatic movie camera for his 11th birthday. Bobby amused himself by filming his neighbors, sometimes without their knowledge, through windows and over garden fences. 12 seconds of film. Just a girl and her garden patch and one swiftly blooming rose. It killed the town. Bobby showed it to his friends. Children believe readily. Bobby was the first to die. Parents looked into it, watched the film themselves, and they began to die. Anna disappeared. Perhaps they attacked her. Perhaps she escaped. But even in her absence, knowledge of a true witch was running wild through the population, as if Anna had beckoned it herself to grow verdant and spread. The great curse had killed 64 Centralians by the 1st of June. The footage was offered to a national news organization. That was the precipice. It might have been shown in prime time, between Leave It to Beaver and My Three Sons. We came very close to another worldwide